Welcome, Michael. Good to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Genesis started its Bitcoin OTC desk way back in 2013. And what did a Bitcoin trading desk look like then? And how are trades executed and settled?
Back in 2013, as you might imagine, we were early. Many people will tell you we were too early. As the price of Bitcoin was around $80 when we first started kind of getting involved, and we had, through the same desk that we're currently trading Bitcoin, traded fixed income securities. We were bond traders initially, trying to kind of trade another illiquid, off the run financial asset. Like Bitcoin, I wouldn't say was completely foreign, although the fact that we had to set up our own wallets and get that set up as opposed to relying on, Pershing, which was our clearing broker dealer on the security side, was certainly different. The bigger shock, I think, was for the participants in the ecosystem at the time. As you might imagine, it's not too long since kind of the birth of Bitcoin that we got involved, and many of the earliest adopters of Bitcoin were the anarchists and the libertarians, and certainly kind of following the financial crisis and the Occupy Wall Street movement. And here was a Wall Street regulated broker dealer trying to break into Bitcoin and create a marketplace to bring institutional investors. And so certainly there was a lot of interesting stories at the time of walking clients through what an AML KYC process was, and why we needed to run background checks, and why we needed to collect IDs and things like that. But certainly those were the sellers. Those were the guys that had a lot of Bitcoin, and who might have bought it for a few dollars, and here they had a chance to kind of sell it for $80, and they're like, great. We didn't have too many institutional accounts getting involved. It was mostly high net worth. That was based out of Silicon Valley, who just wanted to take a flyer. And maybe it becomes something, maybe it becomes nothing. So that was really the kind of environment back then. Really, really, nascent, immature, and incredibly illiquid.
Well, things have clearly moved along, and now you're one of the leading lending desks, and you've recently moved into prime brokerage. And the March sell-off in the market was the first big test in terms of risk management. How did you cope with that? So we launched our lending business in March of 2018. So it's now just over a couple of years now since we've been doing this. And frankly, we launched our business kind of right at the start of the crazy bear market, right? Following the bull run in 2017, 2018 is the ultimate bear market. Which lasts, and you can arguably say that we're still in a prolonged bear market kind of since then. But the companies we started lending to in 2018 had been around for a few years. And frankly, when we got larger and grew our business last year in 2019, it meant a lot to us that each of these businesses survived 2018. So these companies managed to survive where their core asset fell by 85%, 90% plus, which told me that their risk management systems were in place, that they understood risk and reward and when to go for it and when to back off. And it gave us a ton of comfort on the underwriting side that these weren't amateurs, and that they had systems in place. Now, when March 12, March 13 kind of comes around, and frankly, the volatility had started in other markets before March 12, 13 hit. If you remember, right at the start of that week was kind of the first OPEC oil crisis with Russia and production sending oil volatility down. Right. Which sort of spilled over into the equity markets and the bond markets selling off. And
when in times of crisis, we all know correlation goes to one. And so we had our antennas up for sure, so that something could happen in Bitcoin. Now, the magnitude and the speed at which the liquidations and the sell-offs kind of started on that Black Thursday, that's something that we obviously, couldn't be ready for, or certainly kind of expected. But what certainly helped was, one, we only lend to about 30 to 40 counterparties. So it's a manageable number of folks to reach out to and kind of communicate with. And frankly, almost all of them we have a trading relationship with. And so we're in constant communication with them throughout the day anyway on the trading side of the business. And so, when the lending guys wanted to talk about, hey, how do you want to handle this loan regarding additional collateral, or calling for additional collateral, or maybe they wanted to close the loan, the communications were really seamless. And so while it was operationally very stressful, as you might imagine, from folks looking to take on more loans, from folks posting more collateral, from folks closing loans, and as you recall, the Bitcoin blockchain was quite full. And so we had trouble, like even just sending and receiving coins, because they were just not getting picked up in the Bitcoin blocks. And so there was certainly kind of slowness and nervousness. But at the end of the day, we still had no defaults, no forced liquidations, and everything. Once the dust settled, things looked just like we had hoped and prayed when we set and designed up all of our risk systems. And so it was certainly a tremendous stress test for the business and the systems, but also for our people to be able to kind of get through it.
Yeah, that's great. So you recently announced you acquired UK-based custodian Vault, and you're also working with Fireblocks as a vendor. Tell us, why them, and what makes you decide what to build tech in-house or what to outsource?
So, we've been fairly methodical in the way we've built Genesis. As you mentioned, we started trading in 2013, and frankly, that's all we did for the first 5 years. And then we dipped our toes into lending in 2018, and that's the business that's grown far, far beyond my personal expectations for what the business could be. But we've always kind of built products and services in the, hey, what's this equivalent in the traditional market? If we're really kind of trying to woo the big traditional investors that are in stocks and bonds and commodities, what services, what companies exist in that world that is missing in crypto? And so we started kind of talking internally and strategizing about being a crypto prime broker a couple of years ago. We started saying, what are we missing? And the first obvious answer was custody. We had been non-custodial up until that point, but you couldn't really call yourself a prime broker if you couldn't hold your client funds. And so we debated internally the build versus buy strategy. We had created budgets about how would we do this internally, not just kind of hardware, but people we would need to employ both on tech and operations to do this. And we thought about partnerships. Can we work with somebody that exists in the ecosystem today that is a custodian? And can we just set up a partnership arrangement with them where they could be a sub-custodian for what Genesis clients may ultimately want to hold? The conversations with Volt really kind of started last fall, so the fall of 2019, when we said, hey, we're looking at different alternatives and paths, and so were they. And so the initial kind of conversation about maybe partnering up through an acquisition was sort of brainstormed late last year. And we really kind of did the diligence part in January, which was incredibly timely because obviously COVID set in just a few months later. And the ability for us to conduct on-site diligence was incredibly important for us and to be able to meet the team. And so, we've known the Volt team for a couple of years, and we've worked on them on a number of different projects with them. And so we knew the management team, we knew the product, we got to know the tech stack in January. And so it certainly made sense as kind of our best path forward to acquire the business rather than try to, do it on our own.
Mm-hmm. And what about Fireblocks?
So Fireblocks as an interesting dimension, the way they've always kind of pitched the business is great. You have a wallet A and you want to send it to wallet B. A and B might be incredibly secure, but how do you get there? The time of sending the transmission of the coins and the transaction between point A and B might be insecure. How do we create a secure gateway so that nothing can happen to the coins while they're in transit? Mm-hmm. And because we move coins around so much, and on our lending side, we currently have about $1.4 billion in our loan portfolio as we sit here this morning. And we're originating so much volume that securing and making sure the coins movement part was safe certainly made sense. And so Fireblocks kind of certainly helps us out to give us that peace of mind that the coins are okay while in transit as well.
Great. So it seems like everybody's jumping into prime brokerage in the last 2 months. When do you expect traditional prime brokerage entrants to enter, or do the scars need to be earned by these entrants? And how do you anticipate competition working out here?
It's funny. Had you asked me in 2013 when the traditional primes would get involved, I would have probably said probably about 5 to 10 years, right? And we sit here in 2020, 7 years later, and I still feel like they're 5 to 10 years away. In that they've certainly done their homework, and I think they follow the asset class, but I don't really think they're close. Certainly because the largest primes are still the Goldman Sachses and the JP Morgans of the world, who have certainly dipped their toes with various derivative products and stable coins and things like that, but haven't really kind of gotten their hands dirty in the asset class itself and touching the coins. And I still feel like they're certainly a few years away from getting involved. And frankly, it might be easier to acquire an existing crypto prime broker, frankly, than to build something in-house and try to do it themselves.
Right. And we know how Goldman Sachs feels based on their research.
At least one section of Goldman Sachs, yes.
Yes. Okay, well, great. Anything else we can look forward to from Genesis in the next coming months?
Yeah, I mean, the acquisition of Vault helped to kind of spearhead international expansion plans for us. And so we, once the COVID situation subsides, we will be populating a London office as a result. And in January of this year, we started filing paperwork for our presence in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And so in the coming months, you will see New York, London, and Singapore as hubs for various Genesis Prime activities. And given that crypto never sleeps, having 3 different office locations scattered around the world certainly makes sense from a time zone coverage. And we'll continue to roll out products and services that traditional prime brokers provide in the space. So we announced derivatives just a few weeks ago. So we're now actively making markets and over-the-counter options. And we'll get into areas like capital introduction and things like that towards the end of this year.
Fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to your continued success and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Nisa.
Thank you.